Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 16th. This is a special meeting to talk about the Gifted Education Services Program evaluations, findings, and then we're going to have, when this is done, a brief adjournment and then beginning our 8 p.m. meeting. So we need to do that because of the tape. So just to let you know, we'll have about 5 minutes in between. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Copeland.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Good evening, everyone, members of the board and public. When we have particularly, all of our agenda items at CCOB are important, but when we have some culminating kinds of activities, such as this report, it's been decided to hold a special meeting, give the public an opportunity who might not have been able to come during the day to hear the report in real time, and if it be their pleasure, interact with the board and the presenters. Dr. Christina Paul is going to give a summary of where we are with the evaluation of the Gifted and Talented program, and we'll also be able to talk a little bit about first steps about where we're going as a result of the work that she's done. So with that, Dr. Paul.
Good evening, everyone. Board members, public. Glad to see you here. I am here to provide an overview of the findings and recommendations from the evaluation of the Gifted Services Program. We began this evaluation over a year ago and wrapped up our data collection activities just this past early winter, just at the tail end of 2017. The program evaluation encompassed 6 different facets of the Gifted Education Program, 6 key features. And to examine those key features against the Chapter 16 mandate, the Gifted Guidelines of the Pennsylvania Department of Education, as well as the National Association for Gifted Children's Pre-K through Grade 12 Gifted Programming Standards. These were really the guidelines and the benchmarks that we were examining, that I was examining the 6 key features of the program against. And so in order to get a really good picture, an in-depth picture of the gifted program in the district, I conducted over 45 interviews with administrators and teachers and other stakeholders. I performed over 50 observations, classroom observations of seminar activities, challenge classes, etc. I conducted 25 different focus groups with students, primarily in elementary and middle school. I conducted 5 parent focus groups with elementary, middle, and high school parents. And then finally, I conducted a survey to gather feedback from our secondary students in grades 6 through 12, as well as parents of students who have been identified for gifted services. And I had a 41% response rate among the students, which is fairly good, and a 31% response rate among the parents who were invited to participate. So I was very pleased with those survey results. And so pulling all of this information together with program documentation and lots of conversation with the administrators in the district, I was able to paint a picture of the Gifted Education Program services here in this district. And so what I have for you tonight is a high-level summary of the findings and recommendations. Now, with evaluation work, I could write endless reports with technical documentation, data analyses, tables after tables after tables. That information will be most useful to the people who will be carrying out these recommendations, those people who are tasked with overseeing the gifted program, the Evaluation Use Committee, which is a committee of representative stakeholders who will be charged with responding to the findings and recommendations of the evaluation. So that technical documentation and the further detail will be provided to those people. But for today's purpose, for tonight's purpose, and for the purpose of sharing the results with the public, I have a high-level overview of the findings and recommendations. And I will continually be reminding people that to get a really good, meaty description of the findings and recommendations, I would encourage you to read the full document. This slideshow is really not It's a matter of taking this amount of information from an evaluation and paring it down to a 16-page report, which is hard enough, and then for me to put it into a set of slides that is even smaller is pretty hard for me. And so please I do encourage you to review the full report, which is available in board docs. So the report contains more information about the methodology used for the study. It provides a really comprehensive description of the program and the different options that are available at the elementary, the middle, and the high school level. It provides us an overview of the commendations as well as the findings and recommendations for each of the 6 key features that we examined in this evaluation. And so, without further ado, I'd like to move on to the meat of the report. And I'd like to start by providing some commendations. It was very evident through my observations, through my conversations, through the student and the parent feedback that this staff, the staff of teachers that are involved with the gifted education, are very highly regarded. They are a resilient, skilled group of practitioners who have weathered many transitions in program leadership over the years, and they are very, very dedicated, passionate people who love what they do. And so that is my first commendation, is the staff that assists with this program is really quite skilled and quite remarkable in their own right. The second commendation is that although it hasn't been perfected yet, the universal screening procedure is a really important move toward best practices in gifted education. Universal screening provides an entry point for students who, under more traditional screening measures, may be overlooked if the screening procedures rely heavily on simply teacher or parent recommendation. So a universal screening procedure is a very important step toward best practices in gifted education. And like I said, while it's not perfected yet, this is a really, I think, a key success over the past few years is implementing this universal screening procedure for the gifted program. And finally, I'd just like to say thank you to the staff, to the administrators, to all of those who allowed me to come into their classrooms and into their professional life and ask lots of questions. They were very open and responsive to this evaluation process, and I met, I would say, with very little, but in fact, I think I should say I met with no resistance. Everyone was very accommodating and very encouraging and engaged in this process. So kudos to the Lower Merion community for that level of engagement. So now I'd like to move on to talk about the findings and recommendations that go along with each of the 6 key features. And those 6 key features being, first, the programming philosophy. Second, the way that the services are delivered, the model that is used to deliver those services. The third key feature is the screening, identification, and assessment procedures that are used. Fourth, looking at professional development. The fifth component is the family and community collaboration around the gifted education services. And finally, operations, simply the logistics of how the program operates in real time, in real context. So for key feature 1, programming philosophy, goals, and objectives, it's really important that gifted programs have this solid vision statement so that you can, you as a community member, you as an administrator, you as a board member can clearly see the purpose for the program and what the program is aiming to achieve during those times when they're serving the students of interest, in this case, the gifted students. And so, so in my examination of the mission statement and the guiding philosophy and goals and objectives for this program, the first thing that I noticed was that it is very hidden. There is a mission statement that was drafted by a committee of stakeholders several years ago. It was available on the staff side of the website and not available to the public. So that was my first observation, was that it's a very hidden mission statement. Secondly, the mission statement is not actualized. The mission statement that was drafted by this committee is very aspirational and includes many strong connections with the strategic plan. However, I would say that it is more of an aspirational statement than something that has actually been put into practice with the programs as they are delivered currently. And finally, the program goals and objectives are really, they're not articulated in writing. When I would ask different stakeholders across the buildings, or the teachers, in fact, or the parents, I would ask them, what is the purpose of the gifted program, or what goals do you think the services are trying to achieve? I got different answers. And it's conceptually in the minds of the stakeholders different, depending on who you ask. And so the first step in making sure that we have a consistent vision for gifted education will be to follow some of these recommendations. First of all, I would recommend that the district develop an actionable mission statement with clearly aligned program goals and objectives that will define the purpose and the structure of gifted education services in Lower Merion. Now, the Pennsylvania Department of Education requires, by Chapter 16 mandate, that we identify and serve gifted students. But beyond that mandate to identify and serve, there is quite a bit of flexibility in terms of what those services look like. We know that we need to include opportunities for enrichment and or acceleration as appropriate. But beyond that, it's quite loose in terms of the guiding framework for what those services could look like. So it's important that at the local level, we, the district, define what it is that the district would like to accomplish on behalf of the gifted students who attend our schools. The second recommendation that I have is that we should include affective learning needs in the vision of gifted education. This is a very strong component of the research and best practices in the field of gifted education. In fact, one of the 6 standards from the NAGC, the National Association for Gifted Children, focuses on the social and emotional needs of gifted students. Now, that's not to say that gifted students have social and emotional needs that are unique to them, but it is to say that there are certain social and emotional issues that are more intense or more prevalent for students who have intense passions, high academic skills in certain areas. I mean, you can think of people in your life who you might consider gifted, and you can see the types of things that they might struggle with. Maybe some of us see them in ourselves, such as perfectionism or project management, or other types of social and affective needs that come along with those personalities that are connected to gifted and talented individuals. So that's an important avenue to make sure that an important avenue to include in the mission statement, the vision for gifted education. Finally, I would recommend that the district develop a communications plan around the mission and vision and program goals and objectives so that we can facilitate a shared understanding of the what and the why of gifted education in this district. That might include things like attending to the public side of the website, creating a program brochure that's available at open houses at the beginning of the school year, and other types of communications that can take the mystery out of the gifted education program here in this district. The second key feature is the service delivery model, or the way that we structure the services that are provided for gifted students. As the program currently stands, it is primarily focused on offering an enrichment curriculum during a grade level class of students who've been identified as gifted. So in other words, all the fourth graders who have been identified for gifted services go to an enrichment classroom 1 to 2 times per week and meet with other fourth grade gifted students, maybe from other classes or maybe not, but it's grade level confined, and the services are really limited to that enrichment pull-out time that's offered episodically throughout the week. The differentiation of the general curriculum is the responsibility of the regular education teachers. And regular education teachers are coming to the table with various levels of skill, with various levels of background and interest in providing extensions and accelerative materials to go along with the general curriculum. There are some gifted teachers who, because of their caseload or their schedule, have been able to support regular education teachers in providing differentiated experiences, but that is the exception rather than the rule. So, the third finding in this area is that the enrichment curriculum that is provided during that pull-out time, it's loosely similar across the buildings. There are some similar themes, some common pieces of literature that are used, but the experience that students have with those themes is variable depending on what direction the teacher takes. The same novel, you could see, I observed in one building. The novel was a key piece of the theme, but then it branched out into STEM activities and problem-based learning activities. Whereas in another building, I saw the same novel delivered more as an English language arts extension opportunity, a seminar-style class where the students delved into the themes within the literature. So again, some common opportunities, but experienced in very different ways. Finally, the staffing model that is currently used really does limit teachers' ability to support students outside of those enrichment class periods. Their schedule is comprised primarily of teaching those enrichment classes for each of the different grade levels they're responsible for, and then the management of their caseload, which includes scheduling of annual GIEPs and gathering of feedback from other teachers, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's very little time, especially for those teachers who are at buildings with a higher caseload, there's very little time for them to actually bridge out into the regular classroom where they could provide some of that differentiated support for students who need it. So, along with this key feature, here are my recommendations. Number one is to redesign or to adopt a new service delivery model that includes but does not limit the opportunity to the pull-out enrichment time. The research does tell us that the pull-out enrichment time is important for high-ability students. So that is something that's important to preserve. But the continuum of services should branch out beyond just that pull-out enrichment time. And there are many models, research-based models, that have already been in action for many decades in many places and are alive and well and can be adopted into this environment, but it depends on what the vision and the mission is, what is the purpose. And so there are some existing models that we as a community could examine and determine whether or not they are a good fit within this community. Number two, my recommendation is to provide professional development to all regular education teachers to support differentiation for high ability students. Whether or not a student is identified as gifted, regardless of that, we have many, many high-achieving students in this school district, many at the advanced level when I look at the state standardized testing. lots of those students could benefit from highly rigorous extension opportunities and accelerative opportunities within the regular education curriculum. And so my recommendation is that we first provide that professional development to help teachers be able to identify the behavioral characteristics of gifted students and high ability learners, and then to use appropriate strategies for differentiating the general education curriculum. Strategies such as tiered instruction or learning menus. And many of these could be developed and shared among many teachers. There's no need for every teacher to go at it alone. So the combination of providing the professional development as well as building a repertoire of materials that can extend and enrich the general curriculum would be my recommendation. Number 3 is that I recommend that we establish a framework or a set of guidelines or a curriculum for the types of enrichment experiences that gifted students receive during their pull-out enrichment time. Right now, it is very curricularly driven, but as I said, the curriculum can spiral in different directions depending on the skills and interests of the teachers, as well as what the skills and interests of the students coming to them bring each year. And so because of the variation of experiences that students have depending on which school they are in or which teacher they are learning from, I would recommend that we establish a framework or a set of guidelines for what it is that should be accomplished during that pull-out enrichment time. Is it exposure to interesting and rigorous material? Is it extension of the general classroom material that they weren't able to receive back in their classroom? Are they independent projects and the teacher is acting more as a facilitator and a coach rather than someone who is delivering an enrichment curriculum? There are lots of different ways to structure that enrichment time in those classrooms. And so my recommendation is to build that framework so that we can have some consistency in regard to what we are trying to accomplish with that pull-out enrichment time. My 4th recommendation is to reconsider the staffing model in ways that might create new possibilities for case management and the delivery of support to gifted students outside of their challenge or seminar classroom. My recommendation is to just think creatively. At this point, every gifted education teacher is responsible for the delivery of the enrichment or seminar experience, as well as the case management, as well as, if they have time, supporting the general education teachers. My recommendation is to consider new ways of slicing and dicing the types of services that we want to provide for gifted students and thinking about the staff as even maybe as specialists. Maybe there could be a subset of the teachers who are responsible for delivering that enrichment time. Maybe there are a subset of teachers who are particularly good at working with other general education teachers and differentiating the general curriculum. So thinking about the way that teachers' time is dedicated and for what purpose, I think could help to build out a continuum of services that would extend beyond that enrichment pull-out time. The 3rd key feature, screening, identification, and assessment. In reviewing the information in regard to screening and identification and participation, the first thing I'd like to say is that the data systems that we have in the district are not always perfect mirrors of one another. So my first observation was that it was somewhat challenging to get a really good, accurate picture of the total student population of students who are participating in the gifted program versus those who had been identified but are no longer participating in the program, versus what the state says we have in terms of how many and what grade level students are. So our data sets are not completely in tandem. So some of the numbers that you may hear me refer to are approximations, and that is the reason. But in regard to the universal screening, that data was clearly available to me. And so one of the things that I observed was that there really is a disproportionate representation within our participation. The participants in the gifted program is disproportionate compared to our student body at large when it comes to gender and when it comes to race and ethnicity. I will say that it's not as bad as I've seen in other places, but there are some small differences in the number of or the proportion of the different subgroups within our participation pool. And so that is something that we need to look at very carefully. The universal screening process has also led to some unintended consequences that I've observed are restricting some access to services. For example, if a student comes in kindergarten or in first grade and has clear signs of giftedness, the recommendation, while parents can request a full screening and evaluation at any time, and they do, and the district does follow, the recommendation is to wait until the universal screening procedures take place in the spring of the first grade year. So for the large majority of our students who are waiting until that universal screening procedure in the spring of their first grade year, that means that their evaluation doesn't usually occur until the summer between their first and second grade year, and the beginning of services then in the fall of their second grade year. So at that point, if they had entered our district as a 5-year-old, as a kindergartner, they've been with us for 2 years, they're still the same gifted kid they always were, but they are just now starting to receive services in second grade. Now, part of that is because it is tricky to evaluate individually evaluate students under a certain age. Under about the age of 8, the measurement of intelligence and ability is a little more variable, and so there's a logical hesitation in terms of identifying students too early in the process. But there are some creative ways that we could consider providing some sort of services to students early on throughout that screening process. The third observation is that the current student evaluation process, or when they get to that identification stage, so there's the screening stage and then there's identification when there's an individual look at the individual student. While it is compliant, it is lengthy and it does rely very heavily on the school psychologists to determine whether or not a student is in need of gifted services. And they shared with me, many of them shared with me, that they don't feel confident in the guidelines that they're using in terms of deciding whether or not students who may be right on the border, whether or not they should or shouldn't participate. So they will err in the favor of participate. That is the better way to go when you're trying to err in a cautious direction, err on the side of participation rather than not participating. However, the observation is that that process could use some attention. Finally, the screening, identification, and assessment standard from the National Association for Gifted Children specifically calls out the need for monitoring student progress and assessing student progress as a result of their participation in gifted services. And at this point in time, there is really no system or expectation for students' growth as a result of gifted education students, gifted education services to be measured. So that is left up pretty much to the individual discretion of teachers, and some teachers are doing that, but there really is no systematic expectation in place for doing so. And so, given the gravity of some of these observations, my recommendation here is that the district hire a consultant who has expertise in screening and identification for gifted services with these 3 goals in mind. First, help reduce the bias that is in the process. The bias might be the tools that we're using, it might be the process that we're using. We need somebody who has the skills, expertise, and experience to be able to come in and help us reduce the bias in the process. The second goal would be to introduce more holistic methods of screening. Again, there are models, there are methods available to consider ways that we can screen for giftedness in ways that go beyond just one test that's delivered during the spring of the first grade year or the spring of the second grade year. So more holistic methods such as observations of gifted behaviors in the classroom, portfolio assessment. There are many options to consider here. The third goal is that this consultant help the gifted multidisciplinary teams make more explicit connections among and between the academic strengths and the cognitive talents with the personalized GIEP goals and the types of interventions and experiences that would serve individual students well. Each student comes through the identification process, and there is a profile of talents and strengths and interests that is individual for that student. And so I would like to see a consultant help our teams think about how those individual profiles can translate into a package or a menu of services that will best suit that student's profile. My second recommendation in this area is that the district establish expectations and procedures for measuring and monitoring student progress toward their individualized GIEP goals. And now I'll move on to key feature number 4. These last 3 key features will move a little faster than the first 3. So don't worry, we're almost through. So key feature 4, professional development. My observations are these. Gifted education teachers have not been offered a specialized professional development program to advance their professional knowledge and skills in gifted education. As with many specialized positions in schools, they often fall into the shadows when it comes to professional development. And so that is what I've observed in this case as well. The gifted education teachers have individually been very motivated to pursue their own personal professional learning opportunities, but they are craving, they will tell you, they are craving some leadership around the types of professional development, skill development that is appropriate for gifted education, to stay fresh on the new research and these sorts of things. My second observation is that the professional collaboration time for the gifted education teachers has compromised the district's efforts to provide a more consistent gifted education service offering across the different schools. In the past, the gifted education teachers were able to come together to collaborate, to develop units that they could work on together and then go back to their respective schools and deliver with some consistency. But with the loss of that collaborative time, it becomes harder and harder for the teachers who have largely been in charge of the curriculum to maintain consistency in the experiences that they're delivering during that enrichment pull-out time. And my third observation in this area is that the the gifted education teachers have a wide variety of advanced training in gifted education. We have some staff members who have advanced degrees from very highly respected institutions in gifted education. We have many teachers who are pursuing their endorsement in gifted education. Even though it is not required in this state, it is available. And so they do come with a wide variety of advanced training. And so my recommendations in this area are that, number one, the district provide time, space, and resources for the gifted education teachers to focus on their professional development as a team and to focus on programmatic development. As the district moves forward with making any potential changes to the gifted education program, they're going to need that time to come together to work on this together as a team. The second recommendation here is that we should ensure that all teachers do have or are working on or working toward a minimum level of advanced training in gifted education. Like I said, there are a number of the staff members who do have that advanced training, but we have other people who are coming in with little to no experience in gifted education in their background. And so while the job descriptions do not require an endorsement for the PA gifted education endorsement, that is something that the district should consider recommending or advising the new teachers to work toward as they come into the staff of the program. And then the final recommendation is really just a reminder of a previous recommendation, which is to provide all staff with training in differentiation strategies for advanced learners. Key feature 5, parent and community collaboration. As I mentioned earlier, finding information about the program is challenging. Whenever I evaluate a gifted program, the first thing I do is I examine the website. I think, if I'm a brand new parent to this community, what could I find out about the services that are available? And when you search for information about the gifted education program here in Lower Merion, it's there, but there's not a lot. There are a lot of questions that remain after you review the publicly available information. And the survey results very clearly said that most parents, a majority of the respondents, really wanted to have an increased information flow between the program and themselves. That is in regard to once their students are in the program and receiving services, as well as when they're trying to find out about what is available, what the screening procedures are, what the identification procedures are. Several people referred to this as the hidden program. And so I think there's a lot of mystery around the program. And when you leave mystery for people, there's a lot of imagination that can that flourish in those circumstances. And so my recommendations here are that, number one, the district increase the amount of information that is available to the public. Do this through the website, through, as I said before, providing a brochure, some program literature that's available maybe at open houses or as people ask for it in their schools, and then providing some public information sessions on a regular basis to help inform the public of the screening and identification procedures and what is available for gifted students here in Lower Merion. And number two, I would recommend that we develop some expectations and provide some suggested methods for gifted education teachers to provide more consistent lines of communication with the parents of the students that they're working with. The communication is happening in pockets, and there are some really great strategies that some of the teachers are using. But again, it's left up to the discretion of the teacher. And overwhelmingly, the parents who responded to the survey said that they would like to see increased lines of communication. There's again a lot of mystery around what's happening within those classrooms. And as many of you know, it's hard to get information out of your kids sometimes. So. Final key feature to talk about tonight, program operations. Over the past several years, there has been a lot of turnover in the program leadership, which has been detrimental to the organization of the program. As I outlined in my commendations in the report, the teachers who have been in this program for many, many years have really served as a backbone and a source of consistency in the schools. But that frequent turnover in program leadership has been detrimental. We're very happy that a new program leader, Dr. Adil Nure, is here with us. We hope that he'll be with us for many, many years to come and provide that solid leadership that the staff would really benefit from. The second observation in this regard is that, as I said before, the student data systems in our district are not always completely in sync, so it's from a data analysis point of view, it's challenging to get at the numbers, and so that is the second finding in this regard. Finally, the completion of the administrative tasks around the annual GIEP meetings constitute a substantial amount of the teacher's time. I was really struck by the amount of time that teachers were spending in scheduling meetings with parents and other teachers in their building, and then preparing a thoughtful annual GIEP and preparing for that conference to share feedback with the parents, feedback from both the classroom teachers and from their own classroom, et cetera, et cetera. And so I just was struck with the amount of time that teachers are spending on the paperwork around that document. And so my recommendations here are that the district ensure strong procedural supervision of the program in terms of following Chapter 16 mandates and fitting within the timelines for screening and evaluation, but also providing leadership to support advanced learners through appropriate curriculum and instruction. And that pairs nicely with my second recommendation, which is to establish stronger connections with the curriculum and instruction department. They've got expertise and resources and a knowledge of the general curriculum, and they could work very well with gifted education staff in thinking about some of the systematic supports we could put in place through extensions of the regular curriculum. Number 3, my recommendation is to streamline the procedures and tasks associated with annual GIEP meetings. Again, some of this is as a result of the mandates that we need to follow in this state. Other parts of the process could be made more efficient through recommendations of perhaps using some technology to schedule the meetings more efficiently, to spend less time emailing back and forth with parents and all of these teachers. There are just some administrative tweaks that perhaps could be made to make that time more efficient, and then the teachers could use that time for more substantive thought around curriculum and services. And then finally, identify ways to streamline the syncing of and access to student data related to gifted education services. Right now, we're having to log into 3 or 4 different places to get a complete profile of a gifted student. Their GIEP lives in one place, their assessment data lives in this other database, and then all of their contact information, et cetera, lives in another database. And so if we could streamline those data systems, it would make the operation of the program more efficient. So these are my findings and recommendations. As I said before, there are more details available in this document here. But again, this is just a document, high-level summary of the findings and recommendations, not a technical document. The next steps for this work are that I will be handing this work over to the capable hands of Kimberly Frazier and Adil Nure, who are leading a task force that we're calling the Evaluation Use Committee. That committee is representative of different stakeholders in the community and in the district. They will be tasked with taking these findings and recommendations, reflecting on them, and then developing a response to them. They are charged with developing an action plan Some of the actions will be short-term, can be put into place fairly soon. Other things will, other pieces will take time, and so I'm recommending an action plan that looks at like a 3 to 5 year period of time to respond to these findings and recommendations as the committee sees appropriate. So at this point, I am finished with my presentation, and I will hand it back over to Dr. Gilbert.
Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to say on behalf of the entire board, we've been hearing, the proposal for what you were going to do and the interim results and now the final results. I know there was a recent CCOB meeting as well. So it's been really exciting to sort of hear this entire process and watch this come to completion. It's the evaluation phase. And I just wanted to, thank Superintendent Copeland, because when he joined us, this was his, he really wanted to bring on sort of program evaluation and had really exciting ways of doing that. I think this has been the first large-scale program evaluation, although I know you've been busy doing lots of different things for us. But, this has been really exciting, and I think you've done a really fantastic job, so I want to thank you. And I also want to thank Kimberly Frazier for doing this first evaluation, really being committed to sort of saying, okay, what is it that we're doing well and what can we do better? And I think that shows, really serious leadership on your part. And I think we're excited to see now for both of you, Dr. Nuri as well, to sort of take this and run with it. So what I'd like to do now is just open it up to some I'm hoping fairly short questions. I know this is because we actually have the other meeting at 8 o'clock. I would like to give some time for public comment here. So I know many of you have had the opportunity to ask questions before, so perhaps if there are burning questions, Lori.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't at the committee meeting, so I apologize.
You can't be at every meeting.
Okay. And I also just thank you. This was a completely comprehensive evaluation, and as the parent of a gifted student who's now in 8th grade, you hit a lot of points that really ring true for me. This is a little bit of me search. So I just have 2 quick comments and then a question. One of the issues that my child had in elementary school was connecting with other kids outside of challenge. Like, she needed challenge so much because those were the kids who she could actually connect with. She felt really different among the general peer group. And I think that was bad for her self-esteem. So to the extent that the district can build in social and emotional, especially like social skills at the elementary level for some of the gifted students via the guidance counselors, or make that part of the program, I think that would be really valuable. Also, the extension outside of challenge, I think to the extent that there's a way to do that, or better training of teachers to do differentiation in the classroom. I think that varies widely by teacher. I think those are all really great strategies that you highlighted, but I just wanted to also just really, like, the social skills parts, making eye contact, creating conversation, understanding that not everyone is passionate about the history of the Titanic in first grade, and, finding other things to connect on. And also the paperwork. I think my question is, I was wondering about the disproportionate amount of like what that you meant by that. And also, I would love if the administration would relook at the optional independent study in middle school, because I think that needs a relook. I think it's not ideal right now for kids who opt into that. So, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
I'm not sure, can all those questions be answered in this, or maybe come back to some of them? I'm not sure what we can do here,
Yeah,
but.
it was more comments, but maybe.
Okay.
Sorry, hopefully it's a little more, thank you. I mean, this is incredibly comprehensive report. But for me, the bottom line for me is, I'm not entirely sure I know what we're trying to do with our gifted program. There's a lot of language that we're using, but at the end of the day, I would love to see that mission statement. Now, it sounds like we had one, but you've decided to put that aside and do a different one, or you referred to it in your presentation, but then didn't show it. So do we have a mission statement? Or is that something that we want to write?
There is currently one, as I said, it's on the staff portal side of the district website, and that is something that has already begun to be examined by the Evaluation Use Committee.
Yeah, that's actually task one that we've started with the Evaluation Use Committee, because that overarches everything that we're going to undertake as we move forward. And so we spent some time, the Evaluation Use Committee came together in July for an initial meeting, initiated some readings, and now that we have the final findings of the report, are going to come back together, and task one is really looking at that mission statement. And the value in a mission statement is making sure that all stakeholders know it and are working towards that, right? And that's something that we haven't done.
Right.
prior.
For the longest time, the goal of the challenge program, and what was to provide for students for whom the regular ed classroom was not providing. So you could have a student that qualified for gifted services but didn't need them because the classroom was accommodating them. And certainly as we get into the high school levels, there's a lot more differentiation in terms of speed of delivery and rigor of program, and so a lot of that sort of settles out at the high school level. But I don't know if that's still one of our goals. Is that it looks like we're trying to expand who qualifies for a gifted program. So I think it becomes even more important that we are sure that we know what the point of our gifted program is.
So one part of the gifted program is a de jure. There's a legal requirement. And then the other part is there's a lot that's left to the district to define. And one of the things that we're looking to do is to say, with this fresh look, how do we meet the needs for the gifted program on a de jure legal level? But on the other hand, what are the outcomes that we're looking for kids at different ages? And probably on the third, but some of that is going to be different for each kid. So putting that all together, so I would argue as the group moves forward in this use committee, they may develop something, move to other portions of the recommendations and say, you know what, we need to go back and revisit that now that we've gotten into something else. I think it has to be somewhat more of an iterative process. But I'm just excited that they're beginning it and they're willing to dig in.
I just want to follow up on that. I haven't seen a GIP in a while, but it came out 3 out of 4 times student will achieve XYZ. 3 out of 4 times, 5 out of 4. Is that still the structure of the GIP? And is that by state requirement?
Yeah, there's a piece to it that has to be measurable. So you're putting some base measurements in so you can
Because there might be a better. I would love for that to be looked at as part of this, because I think the compliance on that is very difficult, and it would be really helpful if we could say, okay, this student is gifted in math, and our goal would be to try and accelerate them to the next level as quickly as possible, rather than 4 out of 5 times they'll be able to do X plus Y equals Z.
Okay, Dr. Van Lynch.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Appreciate the thoroughness and the robustness of the report. Just a general question initially, and then I wanted to dig in a little bit more to the larger report that you provided as you presented the slides that addressed it. So did we look at, and I'm sure we did, but if you could just speak to it briefly, Dr. Paul, comparable schools that have high quality, large numbers of students who do get identified for gifted education, some of our comparable districts that we look at in terms of various programming and PSSA scores, et cetera?
I did not with this report. This was really an internal look at our program.
Okay.
But as we move forward with the Evaluation Use Committee, we've discussed providing a list of places that we could visit or program models that are used by peer districts as examples of, as illustrations of the different ways that services can be delivered.
Okay, excellent.
In Pennsylvania.
And then the, excuse me, the second question is related to the precipitous drop-off of students in our high schools that are clearly still identified as gifted. And while, you know, to Mr. Bonaventuro's point that, you know, the curriculum is there, however, the student is still gifted and still may need some levels of support around their giftedness. Have we thought about what level of services we can offer to continue to attract students to the program beyond? I know in curriculum a few years ago we added the small credit of students actually coming in to challenge, which really doesn't really motivate them that much. But it would seem to me that we need to think about this large drop-off of students who have been identified throughout their career here at Lower Merion School District and now no longer take advantage of the services that may very well need them. Mm-hmm. I don't know whose question that should go to.
Well,
Maybe you, Mr. Cope.
It's the reason for the drop-off is because it's a class and the students want to take other,
Right.
you know, AP classes and so forth and so on. So I think that one of the important parts of the recommendation was every teacher, whether you're in the gifted and talented program or not, has to have some of the skills, and that would, to a certain degree, relate to those needs.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoy how you present the information. I have two, hopefully quick questions. One, why do you think there is such a disproportionate representation of the various subgroups participating in the gifted education? I mean, I read the full report. Do you think it's a combination of the type of screening, maybe the type of questions, or the language that's in the screening? Do you think it's certain expectations for some students to perform and then get into the screening, or do you think it's more of the parents then having to opt in and maybe there just wasn't enough information around what type of gifted education program their child would receive that they just decided to opt out? So my first question is, why such a disproportionate amount in the numbers? And then to Robin's point, maybe in 11th and 12th grade, the gifted program would be more of those other types of, addressing those other needs, maybe the social, emotional, the pressure cooker, that kind of thing for those students, rather than maybe an additional class, more of kind of a where are you all emotionally. But that's something that I think that everybody could use. But I mean, you know, that could be a way of keeping them kind of in the program without adding on to their table, to their plate, but keeping them in the loop. That's it.
Thank you. So to respond to your second question, that will be that will be the work of the Evaluation Use Committee. And there are lots of models out there, as I said, some of which do phase into different types of goals at the secondary level. So those will be models that the committee can.
And part of that, too, is also working with our secondary students to see what would entice them, because what we hear a lot from the students is, I don't want another thing added, no matter how you package it. So I think that'll be an important part of it on our end.
And then to respond to the universal screening, and Ms. Ackman has had a similar question. Some more of the details of the disproportionality are in the fuller report, but I think it's a combination of some of the things that you mentioned. This is not an issue that's unique to this district. This is one of the most pressing issues in the field of gifted education, is how do we how do we find students who may come with different levels of background experience or even exposure to certain exams. And for example, I happen to know that there was a small study group that was formed from parents in one portion of our district where they got their kids together to prepare them for the universal screening exam. And so when you come to the table with those sorts of background experiences, exposure to the testing environment is giving those students a leg up over students whose parents maybe weren't that savvy. And so there are lots of different reasons why this remains one of the biggest issues in gifted education. So again, that's one of the reasons why I recommend the
that we
consultant.
actually instituted universal screening in order to address this issue. That was actually
Exactly.
the purpose of, so, you know.
Exactly.
Suba, did you look like you had a, you're going to hold on. So there's lots of interesting discussion here, and I'm guessing this is going to continue as part of the process that you'll be leading, and that we will be hearing about this periodically through CCOB and education meetings. So I would like to, I'm not going to join the meeting without public comment, so we're just going to start the next meeting a little bit later. So if you would like to, make public comment at this point, I'm going to have to do the 3-minute limit. Please let us know where you live generally in the district, and please sign in with Ms. LaPere. And if everybody who wants to ask a question or comment could just sign in right now so we have a sense of how many people, please do so.
Any takers?
Before you get started, I just would like to remind everybody that you are on videotape. So anything that you're saying regarding your child is public. So just to remind people of that at this time. And you can please start by just saying your name and where generally you live.
My name is Jennifer Kelly, and I live in Penn Valley, and I'm a student at Penn Valley Elementary. And I wanted to thank you for the presentation. It was very informative, and I have a question, whether it's been presented to the teachers yet, to the gifted teachers, and also to the classroom teachers. And then I just wanted to put, again, some emphasis on the issue of differentiation within the classroom and how variable that can be. And we've, seen a situation where it was just incredible and natural and easy, and then the other extreme where it was actively resisted, despite, my efforts to advocate for my child, and then to, sort of an in-between of those two extremes. Thank you.
My name is Valerie Dubnoff. I live in Wynwood. And my question is about the determination of the curriculum and how much the teacher gets to just decide what the topic is and how much supervision and accountability they have to decide. I was very pleased that you were talking about streamlining it across the district, but again, if there's one 7th grade teacher or whatever the grade, 6th, 7th, 8th, there's one in the Ballackinwood Middle School and one in Welsh Valley, that's only 2 teachers teaching each grade, and who determines the curriculum and who is going to supervise to make sure that you have the literature aspect and the STEM aspect and stuff like that. And, again, that would be wonderful if that's conveyed to parents.
Thank you. Was there anyone else signed up?
Hi, my name is Deborah Scher. I don't know what else you need to know. I'm in my town, Ballackinwood. And I just want to thank you all. Thank you so much. I think the challenge program for 2 out of 3 of my children who are in it has been really helpful. And I guess my question is, I agree the pullout has been wonderful, and I love the idea of bringing more activities or more differentiation into the classroom. I think that my kids have benefited greatly at the middle school from the specialized programs, the Evolve and Communique and VOC. My eldest, who is at the high school now, did all 3 programs in a row. She was thrilled. It met her needs wonderfully. My middle child was able to do Evolve, did not get into Communique, and is struggling, really struggling with the regular curriculum because it feels very rigid. And she's, you know, it's tough. It's tough to figure out how to meet her needs. So I guess what I would encourage all of you to do is to look at those programs. What are those programs doing for the gifted population? How are they thinking outside the box? How are they learning from those children? It's more of a communication back and forth and not just I'm going to teach you. I guess that's what I would encourage all of you to do because those programs have been a lifesaver for us. So thank you.
Thank you. Was that? Okay.
Yeah, I heard the question on whether the teachers have interacted.
Yeah, so I credit to Dr. Paul, who's ensured that as we're going through this, that she's been in excellent communication with me, that there's been meetings, that she's periodically gone out and met with the gifted support teachers, and to share findings and have discussions. And we all administratively recognize the importance of the gifted support teachers being part of this process. So that definitely is happening. And a couple points that are well taken from community members as we're thinking about our 3 to 5 year plan. There's a couple things we feel like that we can start actualizing pretty quickly. And the professional development piece is something that every year we should be addressing at different levels. And so we do think that that's something that we can put together a plan and have recommendations so that even starting next year we can start working on. And same in terms of the guidelines and framework for what's happening within the challenge classes themselves. So those are all things we've actually also identified as being priority items that the Evaluation Use Committee can tackle.
And that would be the balance between what's a choice and what's a has, which is part of the framework.
Correct.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everyone. I'm going to formally adjourn this meeting, and then we're going to have a 5-minute break while we change the tape, and then we're going to start the next meeting. We invite you to stay and hear all about our next presentation on achievement and growth data. So we'll adjourn for 5 minutes.